What you'll learn in this: how modern wealth compares to historical empires, and why looking at dollars alone hides the truth behind the richest humans of all time. When most Americans hear the phrase richest person alive, their minds instantly jump to familiar names: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett. But if you think today's tech titans are the peak of human wealth, buckle up. What you're about to discover will flip your entire understanding of money, power, and financial history upside down. Because the richest man ever? It isn't Elon Musk. It isn't Jeff Bezos. It isn't even close. Welcome back to Victor Atlas Monroe, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because this is the kind of financial history they never teach you in school, but absolutely should. Let's kick things off with a shocker. If someone earning the average US salary worked non-stop to match Elon Musk's fortune, they'd need over 8 million years. Sounds wild, right? And yet, Musk isn't even in the top 10 if we look at wealth historically. That's because true wealth, the kind that bends nations, shapes history, and rewrites global power, isn't measured by how many billions you have. It's measured by how big a slice of the world you controlled. And throughout history, several men controlled slices so massive, they made modern billionaires look like side characters. Take John D. Rockefeller, for example, America's original oil titan. In 1913, he controlled 2% of the entire US GDP alone. Imagine one person today holding that share. That would give him a modern net worth between $400 billion and $600 billion, well above Musk. But even Rockefeller, the nation's first billionaire, wasn't the richest man in history. Not by a long shot. Before him, political leaders like Joseph Stalin held command over economies worth trillions, not as personal bank accounts, but as unquestioned national control. Stalin personally had almost nothing, yet he ruled over what would be $10 trillion economy today. And then you have figures like Augustus Caesar, who seized Egypt as his personal property and controlled roughly 20% of Roman output, putting his adjusted wealth in the several trillion-dollar range. But even he wasn't number one, because the richest man ever may have lived centuries before banks, before stocks, before modern capitalism, and his influence shaped the medieval world like a monetary supernova. And that's where we're heading next. White right pointing backhand index. If you're loving this breakdown so far, smash that like button and comment history of wealth to show support. It really boosts the channel and helps us keep creating deep financial history content on Victor Atlas Monroe YT. Now let's step deeper into the past, to the golden age of African-powered B. To find the man who makes today's billionaires look like budget shoppers at a clearance sale, we travel nearly 700 years into the past, to the blazing sands of West Africa, where the Mali Empire ruled the trans-Saharan trade routes. And at its throne sat a man whose wealth was so immense, so overwhelming, so unbelievably vast, that historians still struggle to measure it. His name was Mansa Musa, and he may have been the richest human to ever live. Now, when people in the US hear richest man, many expect Silicon Valley founders or Wall Street titans. But Mansa Musa wasn't a businessman. He wasn't a tech visionary. He wasn't even operating in a capitalist system. He was a king with access to the largest gold reserves on Earth. By controlling nearly half of the entire world's gold supply, Mansa Musa held a monopoly on the most valuable resource of his age. And unlike many medieval rulers, he didn't just hoard it, he displayed it. His legendary 1324 pilgrimage to Mecca remains one of the most extravagant journeys ever recorded. Traveling with a caravan of 60,000 people, he distributed gold so freely that he caused inflation across multiple countries. Imagine being so wealthy that your generosity crashes other nations' economies. That was the scale of Musa's power. Some estimates place his fortune at $400 billion in modern terms, others much higher, but truthfully, his wealth was so overwhelming that no modern figure even enters the same conversation. And yet, astonishingly, Mansa Musa still might not be the richest peasant who ever lived, because just 100 years before him, another ruler rose, a conqueror whose empire was so vast, so impossibly large, that its equivalent value dwarfs even Musa's golden peak. A man who owned land, not wealth, but land so expansive it equates to $100 trillion today. But before we reveal him, white right pointing backhand index, make sure you're subscribed to VAM for more mind-blowing financial history. And drop a comment telling us who you think was richer, Musa or Rockefeller, because what comes next takes this story to an entirely different level. If wealth is measured by assets, if it's measured by gold, if it's measured by national control, then only one man stands above them all. A figure so influential, his empire covered more land than any ruler in human history. That man was Genghis Khan. Now, to be clear, Genghis didn't keep his wealth in the way Musk or Bezos do. He wasn't logging into online stock portfolios or watching market tickers. Instead, he controlled something far more powerful: land, resources, people, civilizations. The Mongol Empire at its peak covered nearly 20% of Earth's land surface, an amount so enormous that its modern economic value reaches around $130 trillion. That's the kind of number that makes even Mansa Musa's gold supply look small. But here's the twist: Genghis Khan owned almost nothing personally. His leadership depended on distributing wealth among his soldiers, not hoarding it. So was he the richest? In terms of personal luxury, no. In terms of global influence and economic control, absolutely yes. But here's the key lesson for our modern world. Electric light bulb wealth isn't just a number. Wealth is influence. Wealth is reach. Wealth is the ability to reshape history. That's why comparing Elon Musk to historical figures is complicated. Musk controls a verified fortune of around $400 billion, the largest personal net worth ever recorded in reliably tracked modern history. But historically, he's standing on the shoulders of empires. Rockefeller controlled America's oil. Mansa Musa controlled global gold. Genghis Khan controlled civilizations. Each held a different kind of wealth. So who is the richest man in history? If we go by gold, Mansa Musa. If we go by percentage of national output, Rockefeller. If we go by global control, Genghis Khan. If we go by documented personal wealth in modern terms, Elon Musk. And that's the final twist: the richest man ever depends on how you define wealth. But one thing is certain: today's billionaires aren't the biggest the world has ever seen. They're just the latest chapter in a story far older, far deeper, and far more dramatic than most people realize. White right pointing backhand index. If you enjoyed this documentary-style journey, hit like, subscribe to VamYT, and drop a comment telling us which historical figure shocked you the most. Because here on VamYT, we turn financial history into power.